Buon pomeriggio a tutti. Oggi uno streaming di un'importanza fotonica perché sono riuscito a trovare uno dei componenti dei Greenslade, dei Web, dei Samurai, che ha lavorato con tantissima gente, quindi è una diretta pomeridiana. Io vi ringrazio che vedrete questa live stasera o domani. Penso che sia molto bello perché parliamo con un tastierista, compositore che ha fatto parte dell'epoca prog rock e ha suonato con i Greenslade appunto. Oggi parliamo con Dave Lawson, che è un grandissimo personaggio, per chi conosce di prog sa con chi ha suonato, quindi come sempre io vi auguro una buona visione, sappiate che i sottotitoli si genereranno penso tra 1 o 2 giorni, però chi ne mastica un po' di inglese può capire, quindi buona visione e come sempre i vostri commenti sono ben accetti. Dave, hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi. Fine, thanks. And you?
Yeah, pretty good.
Very good. Now, Dave, you are an important musician, composer, sound designer. Everything said to you, it is important. I want to ask you one thing. Now, Dave Lawson, what do now? It plays some music, it composes. What Dave Lawson do in these years?
Right. Well, unfortunately, 4 years ago, I developed an autoimmune disease called polymyalgia. Poly means many, myalgia means muscle ache. So it attacks all the main muscles of the body, which leaves you feeling very weak. So playing with your arms outstretched, operating a computer with your arms outstretched, all these things are very difficult and give enormous pain to the neck and what have we. So it's a challenge. Also, my hands, you see, my hands, they're curling in. This is called Dupuytren's contracture. They're little white lumps. My hands are deformed anyway, but it's making, as you get older, things start to break down. It's challenging. It hasn't diminished my skills, if you like, all my enthusiasm for music, all my love. But it is a challenge, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't very sad. So we rely on our main computer over here. Dialing up. I'm using Logic at the moment. You can just
okay.
Play, okay. And
okay.
That's what I do my writing on and my programming. Unfortunately, you can't see the beast I have here, which is called a Synclavier Regen.
Okay.
Okay, so I can't really pick this up, unfortunately. But over on this side, I have two massive towers. Oh, and the Synclavier has decided to.
No, but there's no problem. I know it.
No, okay. So the Regen is the brainchild of Cameron Jones, who was one of the original developers with New England Digital back in the day. And they were well ahead of anybody else. They had a black plane, which was like 24-bit in those days. And they initially released the Synclavier as a 16-bit machine. And if you think back of the time that the Fairlight came out and we used the Fairlight on the Yes album, what have we, it sounds very lo-fi, which is what they wanted. They wanted that effect anyway, to be fair, the guys in Yes. But when I programmed a guitar for Trevor Horn to hear, was my carpenter who was busy making some shelves. And Trevor said, well, how does it work? And I said, well, look, so I sampled it. And if you remember that, Owner of a Lonely Heart, the little guitar.
Okay, it was Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Owner of a Lonely Heart.
The sample of guitar.
Yeah, that's it. So that was the Synclavier, albeit mono sampling version, but it was sampled back in that day at 100K, whereas in the studio today, we're normally operating at 96, and that's the accepted format at 24-bit. So we'll be there for a little while, but for a long time we were 24-bit, 44.1, because that was the medium that the CD was pushed as. So we were stuck with that. But things could get better. The new regen is a standard 50K, which is fine. But I'm hoping they'll be able to open things up so you could do a score or you could play along at 96. I don't know if it can do that now because I haven't checked. But it's a very interesting machine. But so what I'm doing now in the absence of a live gig or studio work is I've been doing the on arrangement for people. So I did a little string arrangement for a boy band called 9/11, and that was called I Do. It's like a very successful wedding song. So they wanted some things on it to make it more approachable to an older clientele. So hopefully that'll sell, because I'm on PPL. I'm sort of, because I played the whole thing, I should get a reasonable royalty. So it'd be nice to have something coming in, since my royalties have diminished over the years. And the film scores, what have we, like The Hunger, David Bowie film. I did that. It was a very minimalist score, but that's what Tony Scott, Ridley Scott's brother, wanted. And I originally organized for Jaeger and Denny Jaeger and Michel Rubini to do the score, because I was trying to push the synclavier. And they did the score, but Tony didn't like it. It was too much for him. So he asked me to do it, but I didn't have any professional video equipment. I had a domestic video recorder, play, stop. And anyway, we managed to do it. And it was an interesting film. So that was the second Bowie film I did. I did The Man Who Fell to Earth film.
Yes, it was 1983. 1983. The Younger with Catherine Deneuve, Susan Sarandon. It was a strange movie. But in my opinion, the role of the vampire, it was very fit for David Bowie.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was, as Tony Scott was, he's a very arty director.
Yes, it was a mix of horror and erotic film. It is very strange. But
we had a few interesting things on set. The Catherine Deneuve, hello Catherine, was not willing to remove her clothes for the bedroom bed scene with Susan.
Yes,
I told it was. I said, "Oh, Sarandon, no, Sarandon." Okay, so they found a lady who looked a bit like Catherine, but she was a lady of the night, you know.
A stunt. Yes, I read about it.
Yeah, Cockney's called, well, they're known as brasses, but they're prostitutes. But anyway. But it wasn't long before she tried to ply some of her trade on set. So I think she took, anyway, we won't go into that in detail, but she was very popular, let's put it that way.
Okay. And Dave, back in the history of your career, can you tell about us your first encounter with the music when you was a little child? Have you memories of your encounter with the music?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a little village called Yateley. It's in a county called Hampshire, and up the road was an airfield called Black Bush. At that time, it had been taken over by the U.S. Navy. Well, people think U.S. Navy boats, but no, U.S. Navy aircraft. As a consequence, the United States American families came over and they rented a lot of the big houses in the area, and they sent their kids to the same school that I went to. My dad wanted me to have a private education. He wanted me to, do something with my life. and I think he was bitterly disappointed when I said I wanted to do music. But so there I was. So I went to school with American kids. I started to develop a slight accent, and my hair was very short. But anyway, Dad was not pleased. But they were good payers. My dad ran a grocery store, and it enabled us to get television. So we had television. We had television with westerns shooting, which is my second love. Was after the Air Force, when I played music, I was a marksman shooting rifles. I always say, not Bambi's mother, nothing, don't shoot animals. So sometimes the TV in its infancy, in black and white, they had problems. And while they were fixing the problems, they would have a test card, which was a picture of a young girl with lots of different densities of black and white, so they could adjust their contrast and what have we. And accompanying that test card would be music. Very often it was a harp. And I didn't know that was. I just knew that I liked the sound of the harp. And they also played some of the composers that I didn't know their names at the time, but I remember them later on when I heard them again. That was my first introduction to hearing classical music, things that I liked. So it was a long time before I then went to a secondary school and then a grammar school, and then we had music lessons, and I took piano lessons, and my sister really wanted to learn. I wasn't particularly keen, but after 2 weeks she didn't want to know, and I carried on, and I just could not get enough of this piano. So I then heard things like Dave Brubeck.
Take Five.
Yeah. Well, no, this was before then. It was I used to listen to, and I don't know if it still exists. I should imagine it does. It was called Voice of America Jazz Hour.
Ah, yes.
Okay.
It was before Take Five. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So what I would do, I would have a little shortwave radio, and I would listen to that. And at the end of the show, they would play Frank Sinatra's singing "Put Your Dreams Away," and it had a lovely string opening. And I thought, I love the sound of those strings anyway. But they used to play everything, the Miles Davis. When I discovered Miles Davis, I thought, wow. And at the time he had with him Wynton Kelly. Later on he had Bill Evans. But there were Cannonball Adderley, the Adderley brothers, and Chet Baker and Jerry Mulligan, Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane.
Ornette Coleman. Coleman.
Fantastic. So they
Sonny Rollins,
fantastic again. And
Dizzy Gillespie.
Yeah, Dizzy, yeah, with the cheeks. Great
So,
yeah.
Your first encounter, it is with jazz music.
Yeah, my first, if you like, hunger for more was jazz. Mainly because at that time, the BBC output on Radio 3, as it was called in those days, not BBC 3, was, or Radio 3 it is now, but it was fairly sobering, boring, in other words. It's I wasn't listening to the right stuff, but when they did get it right, of course, even in the early days, it was broadcast in stereo, which was unheard of for a radio station. Maybe not in Italy, but
no, in Italy later, because in the 60s, as I can remember, my father said until the 1971, radio and TV was in mono. From 1972 in stereo, because some of recording tapes, some of the recorder Philips, Revox, Tamberg was in two option: mono, track 1/4, 3/2, or stereo.
Yeah. But I know this will sound bizarre, because I do believe we have some parts of Italy are now playing cricket. I only mention that because I used to like to watch a game of cricket. Not mad at it, but used to like it. I used to like some of the commentators' voices, and I tried to mimic them. But it was broadcast on radio, and it was on black and white TV. So I'd watch the action, but turn the sound off, but listen to the commentary in stereo, so you can hear the whole pitch and the sound of the ball hitting the bat and the crowd all in stereo, and the commentators, and so
like a new dubbing, like a stereo dubbing.
Yeah, yes. There was nothing like it to compare at that time, and unfortunately, you might say it was wasted on cricket. But there we go. So then we used to have things like Composer of the Week on Radio 3, and that turned me on to lots of different composers. But to get back to the jazz thing, I was keen to get more into jazz, and I joined the RAF, which is the Royal Air Force music services. And I was posted to a place called Henlow, which is not too far from London. But I went to a rehearsal band in London where you could go and sit in and play with other musicians, like a small band. But unfortunately, they had too many pianists, so I just sat there and wasted my train ticket. But the guy running it was a trumpet player called Freddie Staff. And he said, listen, I feel ever so bad about this. Can I do anything for you? What do you want to do? And I said, well, I just basically need some help with voicings and, I want to play jazz, basically. He said, oh, okay. Then here, I'll do you something. And he wrote down an address, which was Ronnie Scott's club, the Conduit Street, the old club.
Oh, yes.
And then he said, and then ask for Stan Tracy's number. So I went down there, and I went down these steps, and I heard, what do you want? Very brusque voice. And I said, I would like to see if Ronnie Scott's down here. He said, I'm Ronnie Scott. I said, oh, Freddie Staff said you might have Stan Tracy's telephone number. What for? I said, well, I want to learn piano. Oh, okay. He completely changed. Fantastic guy. So I got the number, phoned Stan, and I studied with him. I went away to the Far East in the Air Force for nearly 3 years, came back, studied with him some more. And that was a great sort of eye-opener for me, because when I went for a lesson with Stan, I go to the Ronnie Scott's with him, and actually not pay to get in. I stayed for the first set, whoever it was. Then I get the train back to RAF Uxbridge, where I was stationed. And it was a great education for me. So, J.J. Johnson, Roland Kirk.
Roland Kirk was very important person, because it was a musician that so many bands like G. Froftal, Serenade to a Cuckoo was the cover made by G. Froftal. In my opinion, I prefer Roland Kirk, not so much. G. Froftal, it was good, but I don't like it so much. I don't want to be so rude, but I don't like the style of Ian Anderson. It was a good musician. I don't want to be rude, but G. Froftal, not so much.
No. Well, there was Dexter Gordon. I mean, there was Stan Getz, but
Stan Getz, wow. Paul Desmond.
Stan didn't get on with the other Stan very. They had their differences, because Stan Tracy, did more. They said he was more Thelonious Monk. He wasn't actually. He was more Ellington. He worshipped Duke Ellington. So his voicings, like. That's a typical Ellington phrase. It's very blank and very hard and very stark. But Stan was more, he was just about to embrace bossa nova and Latin stuff. And he's a very lyric. Completely different to someone like John Coltrane, who is like got that edge, It's all to do with the mouthpiece. Yeah, but that was so. It was interesting, very interesting lesson for me, or lessons, to meet these guys, because I met them as well. So it was very nice. Roland Kirk put his hand out and felt my nose. He went, "White man."
It was blind.
Yeah.
It was blind,
It
and
was.
and the things to play to success, like David Jackson, take for the Van de Graaff generator.
Yeah. Difficult.
It was very difficult, I think that.
Yeah. I don't play anymore. I mean, I could play, but I don't. There's too much to do, and but I've still got an old clarinet over there, even though I don't like me playing it. So I've got a little Iwi player as well for sax parts and things. I program some stuff, and then maybe try and interpret them. You play differently on a reed than you do a keyboard, so the cliches are not so forthcoming. But so I did the Air Force thing. I came out of the Air Force, and then the Air Force couldn't give me a career. So they said if I wanted to get myself a career, I could leave 3 months before my 5 years was up. That's how many years I did. So I went to a place called Boozy and Hawkes in St. Giles Square, which had a Hammond organ set up in there. So they used to sell Hammond organs. So I demonstrated Hammond organs, and another gentleman in there who was a much better player than I was, but I knew the kind of the modern stuff that the people wanted to hear. No offense. And so Manfred Mann came in one day, and he bought the very last Hammond M102, which was a factory split Hammond, so they made it more portable. And I bought the other one with my savings from all my gigs in the Far East. So I did an audition for Joe Cocker's Grease band while I was there. Muff Winwood said, "Your playing's all right, but your image is all wrong." I said, "What do you mean by that?" Because I had the same short hair. When I left the Air Force, I still had short hair. So
sure.
Yeah. So there we go. So then it wasn't long before I got into bands, and I think one of the first bands was Episode 6. My sister was a massive fan of Episode 6, in particular the singer Ian Gillan. And
before the Purple.
Oh yeah, no, that's right. Well, when Roger Glover and Ian left Episode 6 to join Purple, and I joined Episode 6, not as a replacement, because I didn't do lead vocals, but as keyboard player and backing vocals and things. But we used to do covers. Remember the band Traffic?
Yes.
It was Steve Winwood.
Steve Winwood, Jim Capaldi.
Yeah, Jim Capaldi, terrific. And so we used to do, and they were a very musical band. We used to do stuff like that. So it was a bit soft, but we had a female singer, a good singer. And so we were limited in sort of what we could do. Whereas, of course, Purple, they were away. And years later, Ian wanted me to join his band as he was leaving Purple. But the first gig that they were going to do was like 2 months in America, and I couldn't do it. So the guy who was going to replace me in Greenslade, I recommended him, and he got the gig. So that was good.
But Dave, I want to ask you, before Greenslade, there was Webb.
Yeah.
Webb, it was before your entrance. Webb was a soul band, but when you're in, when you make I Spider, do you remember the memories of this album? Because it was, for me, when I listened for the first time, I was 10 years old. I've heard I Spider. Wonderful. It was a piece of music, very gothic with horror lyrics. It reminds me. It reminds me the atmosphere of the Hammer films.
Yeah, it was written with that in mind. Not that I'm into gore. I mean, I used to watch the Hammer films and what have we, and they were entertaining. And but as you say, when I joined, they were a soul band. I met them. We were doing a gig. I think it was Exeter University down in the southwest of England. And so I liked the lineup because they had a saxophone, and Tom was a good player. And they also had two drummers, one doubling percussion. So if they both got on the kit, obviously they'd sorted out well beforehand who was going to play what, because you can't have guys playing 4 bars and then a fill. You all know, as you're a drummer, and they'd all do different fills. Everyone flamming and then
Like Frank Zappa, Frank Zappa.
Yeah. So I met him as well. Anyway, so they were an interesting band, and we on those days we didn't have mobile phones or anything, but we got in touch and we went. I had a jam with them and everything, and that was it. I joined them, and I wrote the album. And I mean, the studio where we recorded it was maybe a 15-20 minute walk from my bedsitter where I was living at the time, which was a heavy influence on a lot of the songs for Webb and later for Greenslade. I wrote some of those songs before I joined Greenslade, but so there's not much I don't remember about the bass player had left Webb, and so John Eaton, the acoustic, the second guitarist, decided to play bass. He wasn't really a bassist, bless his heart, but he tried. And I wrote, because most of them read music, I wrote everything out. So they didn't have to learn anything. They just read it until they'd got it fixed in their brain. So that was all right. It also cut down the amount of recording time, which was limited.
Yes, it was very limited because it was 1970.
Yeah.
I Spider, it was 1970. But I want to ask you the inspiration of the lyrics and the theme of the song. Can you tell us the work in progress of this song? Because I know that you write it down by your own, but I want to ask you the inspiration of the lyrics, because it is a story of a spider who killed a classical victim. And in my point of view, when I was younger, I was 10 years old, I read it about it, the lyric, and it was very, very gothic, like Christopher Lee. I don't know the image of this song. It is very 9 minutes long, and in 1970 it was a news, because in 1970 prog rock was about to begin with Procolarum and same thing. Can you tell about your memories?
Well, the memories, I mean, a lot of my musical inspiration still came back from jazz and what. I mean, I can't remember the thing, but where was that? So that's the
yes.
So
it was very jazzy.
Yeah, so that's. I mean, I haven't played that for 50 years, so but more, yeah. So that the idea for that was, that modal kind of the jazz thing.
Like Bill Evans, I think it reminds me Bill Evans and the horror thing, jazz horror.
Well, yeah, lyrically, I actually liked spiders, and until when I was living in the Far East, or rather, a feral cat befriended me. A feral meaning wild, and it used to sit outside the house where I was with my first wife. And being an animal lover, I put some food down for it. Worst thing I could have done is say it's back every day. And gradually it came into the house. I couldn't touch it. It would run. But it eventually got and sat down on the seat, and it would watch television with us. Excuse me. And one day I came into the living room, and there was a massive spider on the wall. I mean, it was bigger than my hand. Yeah. So in the past, I could handle fairly large spiders, but this was just a bit too big. So I thought, well, I don't want it in here. So I got a tea towel, from the kitchen, and I crept towards it, and I was just going to do that and put it over it. Yeah. Well, in midair, I was just about to snag it, and it leapt across the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I thought, sod that. So the cat showed a bit of interest. So I don't know what happened, but the spider was no more. The cat disappeared. The cat came back, but the spider didn't. So I don't know. Yeah. But I've always been fascinated. So I spider and you're the fly.
Yes.
I've come along to watch you die. I mean, a very basic lyric. You're frightened. That's plain to see. I think that you're afraid of me. Well, yeah, knowing that he is, or
Yes.
he is knowing, like, oh, really, like.
Dave, basic lyrics, but very, very impressive. Very impressive to young people. And for me now, I'm 38, because I am 38 years old. Every time I've heard, it makes me it makes me think about. It was a good song, because your voice was very, very thick, like later in Greenslade. And for me, this album of Webb was the best one, because before your entrance, they were very soul band, and later Webb, now it is an important prog band, and the first album, it is very, very important one, and it cost so much, the first press of Polydor. Yes, Polydor.
Yeah, it was Polydor. Yeah, unfortunately, we tried to get a boost, if you like, and try and forward our careers. And we took it to Armand Ertegun at Atlantic.
Yes.
And I had an interview with him. He was just an awkward guy, and he just said, "Oh, it sounds like updated King Pleasure." I had to admit, I said, "I'm sorry, I haven't heard of updated King Pleasure." And then we got talking about jazz, and I said, "Did you organize the recordings of some of the albums?" He said, "Yeah, I sure did. I said, I still haven't been able to find out why nobody had a decent piano." Oh, he didn't like that. He didn't like that. Well, when you think about it, the guys that went in all out of their horns and what have we, but nearly every single piano, if it wasn't out of tune, it had notes which just like popped right out. Awful.
Yeah, but Dave, if you think about it, the theme of I Spider, if you think about not the piano or the horns, is the same thing. And if you think about the horns, trumpet, it became an arranged jazz mood. Sorry, if you transpose I Spider not with Webb but with a big band, it is the same thing. Maybe with a big band, it is more powerful. And I think that the CEO of the Atlantic was very right about the theme of the I Spider. Think about it, to play it with an orchestra, with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. For me, it will be a huge success. Think about it, Dave.
Yeah, it's about as far as I can go these days to think about it. There's not. There is an interest in jazz. I mean, a massive interest, but it's still pigeonholed. You've got like a jazz funk thing, and you've got this, that, and the other, and the various players over the years. It doesn't seem possible to make or record any music unless people can actually put you in a pigeonhole. You can actually say, oh, you're a free player, or you're a funk player, or you're, and I don't know if it's for their benefit, because it was like Webb, what we were playing, we were being paid a retainer by our manager, Lawrence Myers, and it was paltry. It was hardly enough to live on. But why did we do it? Well, we did it because we wanted to do it. So we had a rather low opinion of pop music only because we saw them as people that were catering, for the people, rather like Mozart was, if you like, doing work for money. And so I know that sounds a bit pretentious, but we wanted to play a certain kind of music. And as you say, prog was just beginning then. And we had difficulties. We did the Festival of the Midnight Sun in Sweden, and we were very successful. And we went back again for a tour of Sweden, and the person that organized the gigs for us obviously didn't think too much about it, because the last gig we did was at Gothenburg University, and we were playing our usual set and part of the new album and things, and of course they couldn't dance to it. So at one point, this beautiful girl comes up on stage in a tight red dress and leans on the organ looking at me like this, and the drummer's looking at me going, like, wow, someone scored, which we didn't for some reason. Maybe it's because we were all too old and ugly, but
no.
When the thing finished, it was nice to have the female admiration, and even the audience thought it was some sort of female adoration, but it wasn't. She whispered in my ear, it wasn't a room number. She said, "Can you play something we can dance to?" Because all our things are 3/4, 5/4, 7/4, which I get. Yeah.
They think something not change, because I think that in the 70s and now people have to dance, not to listen. If you think about when you was in Sweden, so many young people don't want to listen, but to dance. And the words of this girl, it is very clearly. It is very clearly.
Yeah, I can.
And I think that for a musician, for a musician who played some kind of music and became from jazz, it is a huge sadness about it. And I think that in 1970, maybe Dave, you was very sad about and think about of your job. I will do an accountant or a musician. I don't know. And I think that this question was in your mind. No?
Well, at the time, at the end of my education, I didn't get very many qualifications, because I'd gone from what we called a secondary modern school, which
secondary school, yes.
Yeah, but because of my work, there were two guys in the top classes who were doing the best work, me and another guy, and we were offered a place at the grammar school.
So yes, the grammar school was a specialization. For students. Primary, secondary, and grammar school was like the university.
Yeah,
I think that.
Go into university from grammar school, but the class they put me in, there were only two subjects that the guys were interested in: football and women, because they were all like 15, 16, and they weren't interested in learning anything. And it kind of meant that all the classes I attended, that the teachers weren't very interested in teaching them. So I was a bit down about it. And a guy I used to go to for piano lessons, not classical, this was something else. This wasn't strictly jazz, although he did introduce me a few chord shapes. That's why I went to him. And he said, did I ever think about joining the Air Force? Because if you join the Air Force as a musician during the days when we had something called national service, you only did 2 years. But if you wanted to be a musician, you had to do the full 5 years. So when I joined, there were still people in the music services who were national service, but joined the music service. People like Herbie Flowers, who's an English bass player who's known for countless sessions, and several others as well. And anyway, long story short, that's what I did. But unfortunately, there wasn't enough or enough of those sort of people in the Air Force for me to make it interesting. But it did make me want to find out that the music which we massacred as a military band, what it really sounded like as a class, with a real orchestra. So that did give me an education in music. Unfortunately, I wanted to learn the trumpet or the flute, and I was told, no, you will learn a clarinet. And I couldn't stand the clarinet. And I next did the
Thanks God. You
ended up
you
as
played piano.
Yeah, well, my past the audition on the piano, I played a Count Basie piece.
Okay.
And the director of music at the time said, no. He said, you're swinging it, but the way it's written is like this. And he played it exactly as it was written. And of course, it sounded wooden, because Count Basie didn't write it down like that. The guy for the music publisher transcribed it.
Very straight, very academic thing.
Wooden, yeah.
And later, Dave, you join Greenslade.
Yeah. So
Greenslade, I think that...
I'll make the join, if you like. What happened was that when we changed, the Web changed their name, first of all, to Web from The Web, we then recorded Samurai, and we changed the name to
Samurai, yes, 1971.
Yeah, so we then changed the name to Samurai, and we had a new record company called the Greenwich Gramophone Record Company, and it was owned by a guy called Sir Les Reed, who was a pianist himself, and a very good guy. But his artistic director, I think, or whoever it was for marketing, was Tony Reeves. He worked for him. So that's how I got a word from Tony one day. He said, oh, would you like to come along and have a jam with Dave Greenslade? And he was with Colosseum. And I said, yes. So we went along, and that's how Greenslade happened. Yeah. So
Colosseum was an important band from Vertigo. John Eisman was one of my favorite drummer.
Yeah.
With Ginger Baker, John Eisman, Ginger Baker, and Jerry Conway of Cat Stevens was my first love. Later, Phil Collins, McCulloch, Bruford.
Oh yeah, Bruford. I think, I have to say that Phil Collins is one of the most underrated rock players. He just keeps such good time.
Yes, it was a good one in the 70s when he played with Brand X. It was Jazz Fusion, but Dave Greenslade, who played with John Eisman, Clem Clemson, Detective Stan Smith. Colosseum was an important band, and I think that Greenslade, in my opinion, this box set, it is important for prog rock lover, because inside, have you seen it inside, or you want to see it?
I haven't got that.
Okay.
I don't often get the albums. I said to you that are very.
This is the booklet. This is the booklet.
Okay.
And in my opinion, the restyling like VLP.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure, got it.
My favorite is this.
Bedside Manners, yeah.
And this.
Yeah.
This one, I don't like it so much. Sorry, Dave, but I don't like it so much.
No, that was all. Well, we needed to have a fresh injection of capital and of promotion and all the rest of it, and it wasn't forthcoming. And Joe Smith, who was the Warner Brothers man at the time, he came to England, and we were in Morgan Studios, number 2 studios. Yes, we're in Morgan 3. We had 2 weeks to make the album. They had 3 months to make theirs. So, you know, I didn't get my voice. I'll be the first to admit it's not. It's me. I'm not trying to be someone else. It's me. So
yes, your voice in Time and Tide, it is very different, Dave. Because if you think about Dave Lawson in Greenslade, you think about Bedside Manners or another song, temple song or Sundance. And my favorite one for me is the best love prog song, Joie de Vivre.
I didn't get that. Oh, Joie de Vivre. Yeah.
It was very, for me, it was a very love prog song that I dedicate to my wife after our marriage. And I think about the most important thing for Greenslade is the collaboration with Roger Dean.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you tell us about? It is my curiosity. Have you the idea of this Goblin?
No idea where Roger got that from.
Okay, it was Roger Dean because.
No, what it was the 2 keyboards, the 4 hands.
Okay. Yeah. Because it reminds me Goblin from Spider-Man, the comic book.
Yeah.
But
Roger had a free hand on that, and the inspiration came from the Yes albums. Our engineer Greg Jackman, his wife was Lola. What's her first name? Anyway, but Lola became the manager of Psalm West Studios, where Trevor Horn owned and ran.
Psalm, okay.
Yeah. So Greg had been an engineer on our albums, but also Moody Blues, and he was and later on in life, of course, Status Quo and things was wasted on that really. But he had good ears, and he wouldn't mind me telling you, but sadly his hearing is almost gone. She's very, very sad, very cruel. But Lola was Chris Squire's wife's sister.
Okay.
So when Greg was doing Fish Out of Water, whatever the album was called, Chris's album.
Yes. Yeah. The first album, Fish Out of Water, yes.
So Andrew Jackman was involved with that as well. Well, Andrew was Greg's brother. But so Greg was doing that. He met Lola. They fell for each other, blah, 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 married and all the rest of it. And that's how I got to meet the members of Yes and all the rest of it. So the influence of Roger Dean's artistry, if you like, his particular way of doing
important
things.
Yes.
Yeah, very important.
Because Roger Dean in those days, it was an important graphic illustrator. Yes, or Ibiza.
The problem with Roger, he is like some of the famous impressionist art. I mean, immediately who it is.
Yes.
The same as if you look at a Monet or a Van Gogh. I mean, it's instantly who it is. So that's the only problem with Roger is he had a style which was fantastic, and so you couldn't really knock it. And in actual fact, it was a help because it was a very memorable looking album cover.
Yes, like another one was Hypnosis. Like another one was Studio Hypnosis, the Pink Floyd cover.
Oh yeah.
Storm Forgenson and Aubrey Powell was an important duo. They made cover for Led Zeppelin, 10cc.
Yeah, we were talking about it. I mean, when we came to choose the name for Greenslade, the band, we just couldn't come up with a name. What we would do is we would think of a name, and then someone would try and make fun of it, like in a headline. Well, if you did that, you'd say, how about Led Zeppelin? And then they go, well, hang on. He was about as good as a Led Zeppelin, which would be derogatory, you know. You could make fun of it. So we ended up with Greenslade, but I don't know if that was still right for the band, because we used to have a guy that used to commentate for a program called The Goon Show, and that was a guy called Greenslade. But anyway, he was the master of ceremony.
The Goon Show was an important BBC program show with Peter Sellers.
Milligan, Harry Seacombe, yeah. Well, I was lucky enough to do an album with Spike Milligan called The Snow Goose, which is another thing I played with the London Symphony Orchestra on a little micro Moog, which is basically just a sine wave that I use. But it was we did it live at the Albert Hall, and it was good. But Spike had a problem with depression, and they would call him bipolar these days, but he used to call it the black dog. Or no, Churchill called it the black dog. Yeah, and Churchill used to suffer from it as well. But yeah, it was interesting working with him, and lots of fun as well. But yeah, so the Greenslade thing, well, we were stuck with it, and so it went on, and people remembered it as that. So it's not a problem. Yeah.
I want to tell you this: Greenslade in Italy, it is an important and remembered band of prog.
Oh, good.
Let me think. The last month, in November, I was in a record shop, the last one in the city where I lived. The city is Brescia, near Milan, and I was in this important record shop, and I see the first press of Greenslade. It cost so much.
Really?
100 euros.
Wow.
Because it is the first press.
Amazing, yeah.
Because so many prog band like Greenslade or another one, I think about not the same band, King Crimson, yes, Genesis, as I said before, but Greenslade, or maybe you think about another bands like 10cc. 10cc was an important, not prog, but pop band, or maybe Brand X was jazz rock fusion. I think that those albums were more expensive, like the first press of Dark Side of the Moon. Okay, Dark Side of the Moon, first press, it cost so much money, but I think that I want to spend my money in bands, a very important bands, maybe minor bands, but in my point of view, Greenslade, when I was young, I'm not old because I'm 38, was the first inspirational band to form my first prog band when I was 15 years old.
Oh, excellent. Oh, well, I'm glad that we were kind of inspirational.
Yes,
that's it.
Because when you listen some good music, you have to research. And when I open this YouTube channel, my aim, my focus is to research people like you and talk about their career, because I think that it is very important, Dave. And it is a pleasure to talk about. I want to ask you the last thing. Sorry, the last question. I am a classical drummer, but I like so much synthesizer, and I think that the most beautiful instrument for the prog was the mellotron.
Okay, yeah.
And Dave, have you one or not?
No, I haven't. I have a software equivalent made by
Okay.
GeForce.
GeForce, yes. Mtron.
They asked, yeah, that's right. They asked me to help them develop it,
Mm.
and I said, "Well, I've listened to what you've got already, and apart from cosmetics, you know, where you've left space where something could go, where you could write a bit of history about that particular sound, which I think would be important to a user, there's not a lot I can suggest, because you've got it. Whatever you're doing right. I can't see a way of improving on that. Anyway, I've got that because they gave me the pre-release version of it, which is very nice. But here's the thing. I used the mellotron in Wessex Studios because there was one in there when we recorded I Spider.
Yes. But it was mellotron MK2 or M400.
No idea. I can't remember.
It was white. It was white.
It was, yeah.
Yes, it was M400, the same mellotron of Rick Wakeman.
Okay. Well, the other time I used one was the one that the Beatles had used. And
EMI mellotron. EMI mellotron.
That's right. And that was at Abbey Road. And anyway, I did that, but I was back. I used to go to Abbey Road quite a bit for various sessions. We had there's a band called The Shadows.
Okay.
50s.
Cliff Richard.
Yeah, and well, I did a couple of albums for them, and Greatest Hits and something else, and it turned out to be quite successful. And you would get on very well with the drummer, Brian Bennett. He's a very, very good drummer, and in the classical sense as well, but he's jazz mad. He's a Buddy Rich fanatic. But my son is also a drummer, but I can't really show you around the studio all the bits, only the keyboard I've just bumped into, but I can.
I see that you have a good studio, a technical important studio.
Yeah, well, I've got there's a Bosendorfer Grand there, which is nicely tuned. I've got maybe I can just detach. Apologies for the.
No, there's no problem. Thank you, Dave.
I'm going to show you just so you know. I can whiz this over. There, the
wow.
Okay, so there's two of them, which one was expensive enough, but I was lucky enough to pick up the other one.
Below there is the original one, Sinclair. Below.
Yeah, that is the original keyboard. I've got another.
Because on YouTube, Dave, there is a clip on 1987 that you present the Sinclair.
That's right, but that's an even older keyboard. That's
okay.
That's a shorter one when it was a sampler, and that is the VKB.
Okay.
Designed by Jeff Tripp, and I've got another one. Which is under the piano. There's the Bosendorfer under the piano. There's another one of those VKBs, which belonged to Benny from ABBA.
Okay.
And, he wanted a black keyboard, and I had one. And our engineer, if you like, Steve Hills of Sinclair European Services, said, "Would I give Benny my black keyboard?" I said, "Yeah, okay."
Okay.
So over there's two stuff. There's another MIDI keyboard, and the back wall has got soundproofing, so it's pretty dead in here, and some baffles over the piano and what have we.
No, it is a studio. It is an ambient studio.
Well, yeah, it does me proud. It's good sound wise. My son put it together for me, so I'm indebted to him. And then going around the current day, we've got behind down here with a module as well. So it's giving me.
Okay. It reminds. Yes. Prophet.
12 voice. Dave Smith's favorite Prophet.
Okay.
And my original Fender Rhodes.
Fender Rhodes.
And there's the doldrums and all the rest of it. They were played on that. Okay. So
Dave.
Yeah, there we are.
Thank you for the panoramic view. Thank you. Thank you. And Dave, I want to send my joyful words. It is an honor and a pleasure to talk with you. Stay in touch. I
will, and hopefully I can get rid of this disease. And
I think that Dave, you will find.
Well, I've got a lovely organic Barolo for Christmas.
Okay, wow, wonderful for Christmas.
This one is, yeah, because I had the same one last year. So it's I didn't buy it. George Fenton bought it for me. We did many films together, but he knows what I like. Fantastic. Thanks for having me, Matteo.
No, thank you for your time and your precious kindness. Thank you for everything, Dave. And now I will send you my love for everything. Keep in touch. Saluto tutti, buona serata e ci vediamo
Mille grazie.
domani. Mille grazie.
Bye.
Ciao a tutti, ci vediamo domani. Bye, Dave, thanks. Bye.
Bye.